Nadine sent her last $12,000 3 weeks ago. Samuel said they needed it for their wedding. But the airport security footage captured something else. The moment her fiancé of 12 years let go of her pregnant hand to kiss his other fiancé. A Korean woman wearing his ring. He'd been building a second life for years using Nadine's teaching salary, and now she was trapped. 4 months pregnant with $47 in a country where she couldn't even scream for help. As she collapsed in the rain, a black car stopped. The man who stepped out knew her name. He'd been watching. Now she had one choice. Get in the car with a stranger who might save her or destroy her, or face the night alone with nothing. What she didn't know, he'd been waiting for Samuel, and what he'd do next would either give her justice or make her disappear. Welcome back. Before we dive in, drop a pin showing where you're watching from. I love seeing our global community. Nadine's story today will wreck you emotionally, but I promise, there's hope on the other side of this heartbreak. She gets abandoned while pregnant in a foreign country by the man she spent 12 years building a life with. Hit subscribe, because what happens next proves that sometimes your worst moment is exactly where your best life begins. The airport lights blurred through Nadine's happy tears as she clutched Samuel's hand tighter, her free palm resting protectively over the small bump beneath her yellow dress. After 12 years of waiting, after saving every cent from her teaching job in Cameroon, after all those video calls and promises, they were finally here. Korea, their new beginning. "Sam, I can't believe we made it," she whispered, her accent thick with emotion as they walked through the arrival gate. "Our baby's going to grow up here, with both parents, just like we planned." Samuel squeezed her hand, but didn't look at her, and Nadine was too busy drinking in the sights to notice. The Incheon airport stretched before them like a palace made of glass and steel, so different from anything back home. Her heart swelled. All those extra shifts at the school, all that money she'd transferred to Samuel's account for their wedding, for the apartment deposit, for their future. It was worth it. "There's someone I need to meet," Samuel said suddenly, his voice flat. Nadine turned to him with a smile. "Your friend? The one helping us with the apartment." But Samuel was already pulling away, and that's when Nadine saw her. A Korean woman in a cream-colored designer coat stood near the exit, her face lighting up the moment she spotted Samuel. She was beautiful in that delicate way Nadine had seen in Korean dramas, her skin perfect, her lips painted a soft pink, and the way she looked at Samuel. "No, no, no, no. Sammy!" The woman rushed forward, and Samuel let go of Nadine's hand. He let go. Nadine's world tilted as the woman threw her arms around Samuel's neck as he rapped, his arms around her waist like it was the most natural thing in the world. The airport sounds faded to a dull roar in Nadine's ears. "Sam?" Her voice came out broken, confused. The woman pulled back from the embrace, her eyes finally landing on Nadine with something that looked like pity mixed with triumph. She said something in Korean, soft and melodic, and Samuel responded in the same language, fluent, perfect, like he'd been speaking it all his life. Since when did Samuel speak Korean? "Nadine." He turned to her then, and his face held no warmth, none of the love she'd seen for 12 years. "We need to talk." "What's happening?" Nadine's hands were shaking now, one still clutching her small suitcase, the other moving instinctively to her stomach. "Who is this?" "Sam, you're scaring me." "Her name is Ji-yeon," Samuel said calmly, like he was discussing the weather. "She's my fiancée." The word hit Nadine like a physical blow. "What?" "No. I'm your fiancé. We're getting married next week. The papers are ready. The apartment. Her voice cracked. Sam, we're having a baby. Ji-yeon's eyes widened slightly at that, and she looked at Samuel with a question in her gaze. He shook his head at her, dismissive, then turned back to Nadine. I needed money to come to Korea properly, he said, and there was no apology in his tone. To get established here, you were convenient. All those transfers you made, they helped me build a life here. A real life. Nadine stumbled backward, her suitcase clattering to the floor. You're lying. This is a joke, a horrible... Sam, please. I met Ji-yeon 3 years ago online, he continued, relentless. Her family has connections. They helped me get my visa, my job, everything I couldn't get from... well, from you. 3 years. 3 years. While she'd been planning their future, showing her students pictures of the man she loved, he'd been building a completely different life with someone else, on her money. The baby. Nadine's voice was barely a whisper now, her throat closing up. Sam, this is your baby. Our baby. Ji-yeon said something sharp in Korean, her eyes narrowing. Samuel responded quickly, probably a lie, probably telling her the baby wasn't his, or that Nadine was crazy, or... You need to go back to Cameroon, Samuel said, switching back to English. I'll send you some money for a ticket eventually, but right now... Eventually? The word exploded from Nadine's chest. You brought me here. You promised me. I used my entire savings, everything I had. I quit my job for you. People were staring now, other travelers giving them a wide berth, but Nadine didn't care. Her whole world was crumbling, right here in this too-bright airport. And she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. That was your choice, Samuel said coldly. I never forced you. You lied to me. For years. I did what I had to do. He picked up Ji-yeon's designer bag, slinging it over his shoulder, with an ease that spoke of familiarity. How many times had he done that? How many pictures existed of them together that Nadine had never seen? Ji-yeon's family is waiting. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Harder than it... I'm pregnant and alone in a country where I don't speak the language. Nadine's tears were flowing freely now, hot and angry and desperate. How am I supposed to... Where am I supposed to go? Samuel's jaw tightened, but Ji-yeon tugged on his arm, impatient. She said something else in Korean, her tone sharp, and Samuel nodded. Goodbye, Nadine, he said. And then he walked away. Just like that. 12 years reduced to goodbye, and the click of his shoes on the polished airport floor. Nadine stood frozen, watching the man she loved, the man she thought she loved, disappear into the crowd with another woman on his arm. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto her fallen suitcase, her whole body shaking with sobs that tore from somewhere deep inside her chest. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't be real. But it was. The cold airport floor beneath her was real. The stares from passing strangers were real. The baby growing inside her was real. And Samuel? Samuel was really gone. Hours passed, maybe. Nadine didn't know. She couldn't move, couldn't think beyond the screaming pain in her chest. Airport security approached her twice. Speaking Korean she couldn't understand. Their faces kind, but confused. She just shook her head, tears streaming, until they walked away with worried glances over their shoulders. The sun began to set beyond the massive windows, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that Nadine would have found beautiful yesterday, before her life ended, before she became a fool who believed in fairy tales. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and for one wild second her heart leaped. Maybe Samuel realized his mistake. Maybe he was coming back, maybe. But it was just a notification about her roaming charges. She didn't have an international plan. Of course she didn't. Samuel was supposed to add her to his once they arrived. Another promise broken. Nadine pulled up her banking app with trembling fingers, though she already knew what she'd find. Her account showed $47.82. $47.82. That's what remained of her life savings after the plane tickets, after all those transfers to Samuel, after believing in a future that never existed. Not enough for a hotel. Not enough for food for more than a day or two. Not enough for anything. "What am I going to do?" she whispered to her reflection in the darkening window. "Baby, what are we going to do?" The baby didn't answer, obviously, but Nadine felt a flutter in her stomach. Not a kick yet. She was only 4 months along, but something that reminded her she wasn't just carrying her own broken heart. There was an innocent life depending on her, and she was stranded. The word felt too small for the vastness of her situation. She stood up slowly, her legs stiff from sitting too long, and grabbed her suitcase handle. She couldn't stay in the airport forever. Security would eventually force her out. She needed... what? A plan? Hope? A miracle? The automatic doors slid open as she approached them, and the evening air hit her face like a slap. It was colder than she expected, nothing like the warmth of Cameroon, and she hadn't packed properly, because Samuel said he'd take her shopping once they arrived. The rain started as a drizzle, then quickly became a downpour. Of course it was raining. Nadine stood just outside the airport entrance, her yellow dress plastering to her body, her braids hanging heavy with water, and she just broke. The sobs came back, harder now, mixed with the rain until she couldn't tell what was tears and what wasn't. "I can't do this," she cried to no one, to everyone, to God if he was listening. I don't know how to." A black car pulled up to the curb, sleek and expensive looking, and Nadine stumbled back to give it space. Probably some businessman or rich family. Not her concern. Nothing was her concern anymore, except figuring out how to survive the night. But the car door opened, and a man stepped out. The umbrella appeared above Nadine's head first, blocking the rain before she even registered the person holding it. She looked up through her tears to find a man standing before her, tall and dressed in all black. Black suit jacket, black pants, black shoes so polished they reflected the airport lights even in the rain. His face was sharp, angular in that distinctly Korean way, but his eyes were different from anyone she'd seen so far. They were intense, focused entirely on her, with a concern that felt genuine. "You're getting sick," he said in English, his accent thick but understandable. He shrugged off his jacket and held it out to her. "Please." Nadine just stared at him, her brain struggling to process this new development. Was this a scam? A trick? After what Samuel did, how could she trust anyone? I'm fine," she managed, though her teeth were chattering. The man's eyebrow raised slightly. "You are not fine. You are crying in the rain, alone, at an airport. This is not fine." He stepped closer, draping the jacket over her shoulders before she could protest. It was warm from his body and smelled like some cologne she didn't recognize, and despite everything, Nadine found herself pulling it tighter. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Daehyun," he said simply. "And you are?" "Stranded," Nadine answered, before she could think better of it, and a broken laugh escaped her throat. "I'm very stranded." Something flickered across Daehyun's face. Understanding, maybe, or sympathy. He glanced back at the car where a driver sat waiting, then back to her. "You have somewhere to go?" Nadine shook her head, fresh tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "No, I have nothing. I have nobody." "Then come," Daehyun said, gesturing to the car. "I will help." Every logical part of Nadine's brain screamed at her to refuse, to run, to not get into a stranger's car in a foreign country. But the louder part of her brain, the part that was tired and heartbroken and so very scared, that part whispered that she didn't have better options. "Why would you help me?" she asked, searching his face for ulterior motives. "You don't even know me." Dae-hyun was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes studying her with an intensity that should have felt uncomfortable, but somehow didn't. "My sister," he finally said, his voice softer. Years ago, she was alone in America, scared. A stranger helped her when no one else would. He paused. "I think about that person often, how they changed her life by choosing kindness." Nadine wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe that someone in this nightmare of a day could be decent. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out, because if he was going to change, his mind about helping, better to know now. "And I don't have money for a hotel. And the father he left me here. He abandoned me." The words tumbled out faster, her voice breaking. "I'm 4 months pregnant and alone, and I don't speak Korean. And I don't know what to do." Dae-hyun's expression didn't change, didn't show disgust or judgment, or any of the things Nadine expected. Instead, he simply held out his hand. "Then you definitely cannot stay in the rain. Please, let me help." Nadine looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment, then at the warm car behind him, then at the dark airport behind her, where Samuel had destroyed her world. What choice did she really have? She took his hand. His palm was warm and steady, and he helped her into the car with a gentleness that made her throat tight with new tears. The interior was leather and luxury, so far removed from anything in her previous life that it felt like stepping into a different universe. Dae-hyun slid in, beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, and said something in Korean to the driver. The car pulled smoothly away from the curb, and Nadine watched the airport disappear behind them, taking the last fragments of her old dreams with it. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "Somewhere safe," Dae-hyun replied. "Somewhere warm and dry. Then we talk about what you need." Nadine nodded, too exhausted to argue, too broken to care much about anything. She stared out the window as they drove through streets she didn't recognize, past signs she couldn't read, deeper into a city that was supposed to be her new home, but now felt like an alien planet. "What's your name?" Dae-hyun asked after a few minutes of silence. "Nadine," she whispered. "I'm Nadine, and I'm the biggest fool who ever lived." "No," Dae-hyun said firmly. "Someone who loves and trusts is not a fool. The person who breaks that trust, they are the problem." The kindness in his words broke something loose in Nadine's chest, and she started crying again, unable to stop. She pressed her hand over her mouth, trying to muffle the sobs, mortified to be falling apart in front of this stranger. "I'm sorry," she gasped between tears. "I'm so sorry. I can't stop." "Don't apologize," Dae-hyun said gently. "Cry as much as you need. Sometimes tears are the only way through." So she did. She cried for the 12 years she wasted on Samuel. She cried for the baby growing inside her who deserved better than this mess. She cried for her teaching job in Cameroon that she'd quit, for the apartment there that she'd given up, for the life she'd dismantled brick by brick because she believed in forever. By the time the car stopped, Nadine's tears had finally slowed to hiccups and sniffles. She looked up to find they were parked in front of a tall building, all glass and modern architecture, with a doorman in a crisp uniform who rushed forward with an umbrella the moment he saw them. "This is your home?" Nadine asked, her voice hoarse. "One of them," Dae-hyun replied simply, then caught her expression. "I have business interest, several properties. This one has security, a doctor in the building, and a guest suite that no one is using. A doctor. The baby. Nadine's hand went to her stomach instinctively. Dae-hyun noticed. When did you last eat? Nadine tried to remember. The airplane meal? That was hours ago. Maybe 8 hours? I'm not hungry, she lied. Your baby is, Dae-hyun countered, and there was no judgment in his tone, just fact. He opened the car door and offered his hand again. Come. Food first, then rest. Tomorrow we figure out next steps. Tomorrow. The word felt impossible. Nadine wasn't sure she'd survive the next hour, let alone plan for tomorrow. But she took Dae-hyun's hand again anyway, because what else could she do? The apartment, no, penthouse, was ridiculous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, all twinkling lights and modern buildings. The furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine, all clean lines and expensive fabrics. Nadine stood dripping on the marble entryway, suddenly very aware of how out of place she was. I'm ruining your floor, she said numbly. Dae-hyun waved this away like it was nothing. Floors can be cleaned. You cannot stand in wet clothes. He disappeared down a hallway and returned with fluffy towels and what looked like silk pajamas. The guest room is through there. Shower, change, and I will order food. Do you have allergies? Foods you cannot eat while pregnant? The practical questions grounded Nadine somehow, pulling her back from the edge of hysteria. No allergies. Nothing too spicy, maybe? The baby doesn't like spicy. A small smile tugged at Dae-hyun's lips. Noted. Take your time. The guest room was bigger than Nadine's entire apartment back in Cameroon had been. The bathroom had heated floors, and a shower with so many nozzles, she wasn't sure which buttons to press. But the hot water felt like heaven against her cold skin, and for just a few minutes, she let herself stand under the spray and pretend her life wasn't in ruins. The silk pajamas fit loosely, comfortable, and there was even a new toothbrush still in packaging on the counter. Nadine stared at it for a long moment, wondering how many guests Dae-hyun had that he kept supplies like this on hand, then decided she didn't care. She brushed her teeth, combed her fingers through her wet braids, and tried not to look at her reflection too closely. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her face puffy, and she looked exactly like what she was, lost. When she emerged, she found Dae-hyun in the kitchen area, talking on his phone in rapid Korean. He glanced up when she entered and quickly ended the call. Better? He asked. Less wet, Nadine replied, which wasn't exactly the same thing, but was all she could manage. Thank you. For all of this. I'll pay you back somehow, I promise. I just need to figure out. Stop, Dae-hyun interrupted gently. No talk of payment. Sit. The food will arrive soon. Nadine sat at the kitchen island, her hands folded in her lap, feeling like she was in some kind of bizarre dream. Just this morning, she'd woken up on an airplane next to Samuel, her heart full of hope and excitement. Now she was in a stranger's penthouse, pregnant and abandoned, with $47 to her name. Can I ask you something? Dae-hyun said, pulling 2 bottles of water from the refrigerator and sliding one across to her. Nadine nodded warily. The man who left you, he's Korean? No, he's from Cameroon, like me. But he'd been planning this for years, apparently. Met someone here. Built a whole life. Her voice cracked again. I was just his bank account. Dae-hyun's jaw tightened, his eyes going hard for just a moment before he controlled his expression. His name? Why? Because maybe I know him. Korea is big, but certain communities, they overlap. Nadine hesitated, gripping the water bottle so tightly the plastic crackled. Part of her wanted to scream Samuel's name, to let Dae-hyun's obvious connections do whatever mysterious things they might do. But a larger part, the part that was already scared and overwhelmed, that part whispered to be careful. Samuel Okafor, she finally said, watching Dae-hyun's face for recognition. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered behind his eyes. And the woman? Ji-yeon. I don't know her last name. He called her Ji-yeon, and she looked expensive, like her family had money. Dae-hyun pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then set it aside. I will see what I can find. Not for revenge, he added, seeing Nadine's expression. But you should know who you are dealing with. And maybe there are things he did that are not legal. The doorbell rang before Nadine could respond, and suddenly the kitchen counter was covered in white containers of food. Korean dishes she didn't recognize, but the smells made her stomach clench with hunger she'd been ignoring. I didn't know what you would like, Dae-hyun said, opening containers. So I ordered many things. This is bibimbap, very balanced, good for pregnant women. This is samgyetang, chicken soup, easy on stomach. This is japchae, noodles with vegetables. He kept explaining each dish, his voice steady and calm, and Nadine felt something in her chest loosen slightly. When was the last time someone had taken care of her like this? Not in 12 years, that's for sure. Samuel had always expected her to do the caring. Eat, Dae-hyun encouraged, pushing a bowl toward her. Please, for the baby. Nadine picked up the chopsticks, fumbled with them for a moment, then gave up and asked, Do you have a fork, maybe? Dae-hyun's lips twitched into an almost smile. Of course. He retrieved one from a drawer and handed it over. Chopsticks take practice. The food was delicious, and once Nadine started eating, she couldn't stop. She tried a bit of everything, her appetite returning with a vengeance, as if her body had just remembered it needed fuel. Dae-hyun ate too, but mostly he watched her, his expression unreadable. Can I ask you something now? Nadine said between bites. Yes. Why are you really helping me? And don't say it's just about your sister. People don't do this, not for strangers. Dae-hyun set down his chopsticks carefully, considering his answer. When I saw you at the airport, you looked like someone whose world had ended. I know that look. I have seen it before, in mirrors, in my sister's eyes, in people He paused. I have resources that sit unused, a guest room that stays empty, money that does nothing but collect interest. Why not use these things to help someone who needs it? But you don't know me, Nadine pressed. I could be lying. I could be dangerous. I could. You are 4 months pregnant, crying in the rain, with one small suitcase and eyes that hold no deception, Dae-hyun interrupted. You are many things, but dangerous is not one of them. Nadine looked down at her food, blinking back fresh tears. I don't know how to accept this, how to accept kindness from someone when the person I loved for 12 years just destroyed me. Then don't think of it as accepting, Dae-hyun suggested. Think of it as surviving. You do what you must to survive today. Tomorrow, you can worry about pride or repayment or whatever else. But today, you survive. It was such a simple way to look at it, and yet it helped. Nadine nodded slowly. Okay. Surviving. I can do that. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Nadine felt her body begin to relax despite everything. The food, the warmth, the safety of these walls. It was temporary, probably, but right now it was enough. Dae-hyun's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his expression darkening slightly. What? Nadine asked, her heart rate picking up. Did you find something? About Samuel? Maybe, Dae-hyun said carefully. There is a Samuel Okafor, registered with immigration. Came to Korea 2 years ago on a work visa, sponsored by a company called Hanjin Exports. The company is owned by the Lee family. Is that significant? Dae-hyun's mouth formed a thin line. The Lee family is very wealthy, very connected. If Ji-yeon is a Lee, then He trailed off, his fingers tapping against the counter in thought. Then what? Nadine pressed, anxiety creeping back into her chest. Then Samuel chose his targets carefully, Dae-hyun said bluntly. The Lees can provide citizenship pathways, business opportunities, social standing. Everything someone would need to build a life here. And if he made them believe you were… What? A mistake from his past? A clingy ex? Nadine's stomach turned. He told them I was pregnant. But did he tell them the baby is his? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Nadine thought back to the airport, to Ji-yeon's shocked face when she mentioned the baby, to Samuel's quick response in Korean. I don't think so, she whispered. He probably told her I was crazy or lying or… People like Samuel are very good at stories, Dae-hyun said, his voice edged with something cold. They tell each person exactly what that person wants to hear. So what do I do? Nadine felt the panic rising again. If he has this powerful family backing him, how am I supposed to… I can't fight that. I can't even afford a hotel. You are not alone anymore, Dae-hyun said firmly, and the certainty in his voice made Nadine look up. I told you I would help. I meant it. But why? The question burst from Nadine again, more desperate this time. You keep saying you'll help, but this isn't just giving someone a ride or buying them dinner. This is going to be complicated and messy and probably expensive and… Nadine, Dae-hyun waited until she met his eyes. Do you know what I do? For work? She shook her head. I run a security company. We protect people, investigate fraud, handle situations that are complicated. We also have other business interests, but that is the core. He leaned forward slightly. What Samuel did to you, taking your money under false pretenses, abandoning you in a foreign country while pregnant. These are not just moral wrongs. Some of them may be crimes. You think I should go to the police? Dae-hyun's expression suggested that wasn't quite what he meant. The police here are difficult with international cases, language barriers, jurisdiction questions, and if the Lee family gets involved… He shook his head. There are better ways. What kind of better ways? Nadine asked, suddenly very aware that she didn't really know anything about this man who'd rescued her. Legal ways, Dae-hyun assured her, seeming to read her concern. Gathering evidence, documenting everything, building a case that cannot be ignored. My company has lawyers, investigators, people who know how to handle situations like this. It sounded too good to be true. Everything in Nodine's life had taught her that when something sounded too good to be true, it usually was. But she was also out of options, and Dae-hyun hadn't asked for anything in return yet. Why would your company help me? She asked carefully. What do you want from this? Dae-hyun was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her face. Justice, he finally said. I want justice for someone who was wronged, and I want Samuel to understand that he cannot treat people this way without consequences. There was something personal in his tone, something that hinted at history Nadine didn't know. But before she could ask, Dae-hyun stood and began clearing the containers. It is late, he said, his voice returning to that gentle tone from earlier. You need rest. The guest room has everything you should need. But if you require anything, my room is down the hall. Do not hesitate to knock. Nadine stood, too, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. The adrenaline that had kept her functioning was wearing off, leaving only bone-deep weariness. Dae-hyun, thank you. I know I keep saying it, but… Then stop saying it, he interrupted with a small smile. Save your thanks for when all this is over, and you are standing on your own feet again. That is when I will want to hear it. Nadine nodded, her throat too tight for words, and made her way to the guest room. The bed was enormous, with sheets so soft they felt like clouds, and she sank into them with a sigh that was part relief, part despair. She placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the small bump there. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the baby. "I'm so sorry I brought you into this mess. But I promise I'm going to figure this out. We're going to be okay." The baby fluttered in response, or maybe that was just Nadine's imagination. But either way, it was enough to make her close her eyes and let sleep drag her under. Nadine woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and, for one blissful moment, forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back. Samuel, the airport, the rain, Daehyun. And she curled into herself, pressing her face into the pillow to muffle the sob that tried to escape. A gentle knock on the door stopped her before she could fully spiral. "Nadine," Daehyun's voice came through the wood. "I have breakfast. And someone I want you to meet, if you are ready." Someone to meet. Nadine's anxiety spiked immediately. She sat up, running her hands over her hair, realizing she probably looked terrible. "Give me 10 minutes. Take your time." Nadine found her suitcase in the corner, where someone must have brought it in while she slept. She pulled out a simple purple dress and sandals, washed her face, and tried to make herself presentable. The mirror showed a woman who looked shell-shocked, her eyes still puffy despite the sleep. But it would have to do. In the main living area, she found Daehyun sitting with an older Korean woman who had kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. The woman stood immediately when Nadine entered, offering a warm smile. "Nadine, this is Dr. Lim," Daehyun introduced. "She works in this building and has experience with international patients. I thought you should see a doctor. Make sure you and the baby are healthy after yesterday's stress." Nadine's eyes stung with fresh tears. Of course he'd thought of that. "I can't pay," she said quietly, hating how those words sounded. "I mean, not right now." "No payment," Dr. Lim said in accented but clear English, waving her hand dismissively. "Daehyun explained your situation. Any friend of his is someone I help. Please sit. Let me examine you." The examination was gentle and thorough, Dr. Lim asking questions about her pregnancy history, her symptoms, her stress levels. Nadine answered everything honestly, too tired to pretend she was fine when she clearly wasn't. "The baby's heartbeat is strong," Dr. Lim finally announced, and Nadine felt tension. She didn't know she'd been holding release from her shoulders. "You are dehydrated, and your blood pressure is elevated. But this is expected after trauma. Rest, fluids, good food. These things will help. What about, with everything that happened, could the stress have—" "Babies are resilient," Dr. Lim assured her. "But yes, you must take care of yourself now. No more standing in the rain, yes." She smiled warmly. "You have support now. Use it." After Dr. Lim left, Nadine found Daehyun in the kitchen making tea. He poured her a cup without asking, adding honey the way she'd mentioned she liked it last night. The small observation made her chest tight. "How did you sleep?" he asked. "Better than I should have," Nadine admitted. "I thought I'd be up all night, but I think my body just shut down." "That is normal. Trauma is exhausting." Daehyun slid a plate toward her, scrambled, eggs and toast and fruit. "Eat. Then we talk about next steps if you are ready." Nadine picked at the eggs, her stomach still unsettled despite the hunger. "Did you find out anything else? About Samuel?" "Some things." Daehyun pulled out his phone and swiped through screens. "Samuel has been in Korea for 2 years. Like I said, he works as a mid-level manager at Hanjin Exports. His visa is dependent on his employment, which is dependent on the Lee family's good favor. So, if they find out he lied to them, his visa situation becomes complicated, yes." Daehyun's expression was neutral, but his eyes held something sharper. But that is not the interesting part. The interesting part is the money transfers. Nadine's head snapped up. What money transfers? The ones you made to him. I had my team look into it. Legally, he added quickly. Banking records that are available through proper channels. Over the past 2 years, you sent him approximately $40,000. The number made Nadine's stomach drop, even though she'd known it was substantial. Hearing it stated so plainly made it worse somehow. I was saving for our future, she whispered. He said he needed help with the apartment deposit, with wedding costs, with courting Ji-yeon, apparently, Dae-hyun finished grimly, because the money trail shows purchases that match a typical courtship expenses. Expensive dinners, jewelry, trips to Jeju Island. He took my money to date someone else? Nadine's voice rose, anger finally cutting through the grief. He used my savings to buy her presents. Yes, Dae-hyun's jaw was tight, and this might be fraud. Obtaining money under false pretenses. An international lawyer could make a case. But I gave it willingly, Nadine said, deflating again. He didn't force me. He just lied about what it was for. Lies that induced you to give money you otherwise would not have given. That is fraud in many jurisdictions. Dae-hyun leaned forward. Nadine, I know you are tired. I know you want to hide and heal and forget this happened. But if you want justice, if you want him to face consequences, we need to act while the evidence is fresh. Nadine stared at her plate, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted exactly what Dae-hyun described, to hide, to heal, to pretend Samuel didn't exist. But another part, a part that was growing stronger with each moment of anger, wanted him to hurt like she was hurting. What would I have to do? She asked quietly. First, we document everything. Every transfer, every message, every promise he made. We build a timeline of his deception. Then, we present it to the authorities. And to the Lee family. The Lee family? Nadine's eyes widened. Why would we tell them? Because they were also deceived, Dae-hyun pointed out. Samuel is using their resources, their name, their connections, all while hiding a pregnant ex-girlfriend he defrauded. They will not appreciate learning this. And their reaction. It might solve several problems at once. It was manipulative, Nadine realized. Strategic. But then again, Samuel had been manipulative too. Maybe it was time to fight fire with fire. Okay, she said, her voice stronger than she expected. Tell me what to do. Dae-hyun smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed his face from severe to almost boyish. First you recover. You rest and eat, and let Dr. Lim monitor you. Then, when you are stronger, we start gathering evidence. I have a team who can help. And in the meantime, he hesitated, as if debating whether to continue. In the meantime, you stay here, in the guest room, for as long as you need. I can't impose like that, Nadine protested automatically. You are not imposing. The room sits empty. Now it will be useful. Dae-hyun's tone was firm. Besides, if we are building a case against Samuel, it is better if you are somewhere he cannot find you. Somewhere safe. The words, somewhere safe, hit Nadine harder than she expected. When was the last time she'd felt truly safe? Not in the past day, certainly. Not in the months before when she'd been planning this move, anxiety gnawing at her constantly. Maybe not ever, if she was honest. What if he comes looking for me? She asked, voicing the fear that had been lurking in the back of her mind. He will not find you here, Dae-hyun said with absolute certainty. This building has security. No one enters without clearance. And even if he somehow discovered where you were, something flickered across his face, something almost dangerous. I would not let him near you. The protectiveness in his voice sent a shiver through Nadine that wasn't entirely fear. She studied Daehyun's face, trying to understand him. He was clearly wealthy, clearly connected, clearly someone with power in this city. But he was using all of that to help her, a stranger, with seemingly nothing to gain. "Can I ask about your sister?" Nadine said suddenly. "You mentioned she was alone in America once. What happened to her?" Daehyun's expression softened. "Minji. She went to America for university, very excited, very confident. But her host family, they were not kind. They took her money, made her work like a servant, treated her poorly." His hands clenched on the counter. "She was too ashamed to tell our family, tried to handle it alone. But a professor noticed. A woman who saw Minji falling asleep in class, saw the bruises she tried to hide. This professor helped her escape, gave her a safe place to stay, connected her with resources. Is Minji okay now?" "She is more than okay. She runs a non-profit helping international students navigate difficult situations. She turned her trauma into purpose." Daehyun met Nadine's eyes. "The professor who helped her, she asked for nothing in return. She just said that Minji should pass the kindness forward when she could. So I do the same." Nadine felt tears threatening again, but these were different. Not grief or despair, but something closer to gratitude, to hope. "Your sister sounds amazing." "She would like you," Daehyun said with a small smile. "She's visiting next month, actually. Maybe you two can meet." Next month. The words implied Nadine would still be here, still be in Daehyun's guest room, still be part of his life in some way. The thought should have felt uncomfortable, but instead it felt grounding, like a future she could imagine, even if she couldn't see its full shape yet. "I'd like that," Nadine said quietly. The days began to blur together in a way that was both comforting and strange. Nadine would wake in the enormous guest bed, stumble to the kitchen, where Daehyun always had breakfast waiting, then spend her mornings documenting everything about Samuel. Every text message, every email, every transfer confirmation. Daehyun's team, lawyers and investigators who treated Nadine with careful respect, helped her organize it all into a timeline that was damning in its clarity. A week passed, then two. Nadine's morning sickness eased slightly, though Dr. Lim said that was normal for the second trimester. Her body adjusted to Korean time, to Korean food, to the rhythm of Daehyun's household, and to Daehyun himself. He was confusing. Some mornings he'd be gone before she woke, leaving only a note about early meetings and instructions for her to eat the food he'd prepared. Other days he worked from home, his office door open, and Nadine would catch glimpses of him on video calls speaking rapid Korean, his expression serious and focused. But in the evenings, when he was home, he'd seek her out. Ask about her day, about the baby, about how she was feeling. Sometimes they'd eat dinner together, and he'd teach her basic Korean phrases. Sometimes they'd sit in comfortable silence, Nadine reading pregnancy books Dr. Lim had recommended, while Daehyun worked on his laptop. It was domestic in a way that made Nadine's chest ache because it felt like what she'd thought she'd have with Samuel, except this was real and easy and didn't require her to bend herself into uncomfortable shapes. "You were staring," Daehyun said one evening, glancing up from his laptop with a raised eyebrow. Nadine blinked, realizing she'd been watching him work instead of focusing on her book. "Sorry, I was just thinking." About how weird this is. A month ago I thought I knew exactly what my life would look like, and now—" She gestured vaguely around the penthouse. "Now I'm living with a man I barely know, in a country I don't understand, preparing to take legal action against the man I thought I loved." "Is it bad weird?" Or good weird? Dae-hyun asked, closing his laptop to give her his full attention. Nadine considered this. Both, maybe. Like, objectively, this situation is terrible. I'm pregnant and betrayed, and basically homeless. But somehow, she struggled for the right words. Somehow, I don't feel as destroyed as I should. Does that make sense? You are stronger than you think, Dae-hyun said simply. Many people would have crumbled completely. But you wake up every day, and you work on building your case. You take care of your baby. You learn Korean phrases, and you smile at Dr. Lim's jokes, and you survive. That is not nothing. I couldn't do it without you, Nadine said, and meant it. Without this place, without your help, I don't know where I'd be. You would have found a way, Dae-hyun replied with certainty. People like you always do. I just made it easier. His phone buzzed before Nadine could respond, and his expression changed as he read the message. It is from my lawyer. They have finished compiling the evidence. They want to know if you are ready to present it to the authorities. Nadine's heart rate picked up. Already? We have been working on this for 2 weeks. The case is strong. Dae-hyun stood and came to sit beside her on the couch, not touching but close enough that she could feel his warmth. But you do not have to do this if you are not ready. We can wait. We can— No, Nadine interrupted, surprised by her own firmness. No, I'm ready. I need him to face consequences. Not just for me, but for— She placed her hand on her stomach. For our baby. I need to know I fought back. Dae-hyun nodded slowly. Okay. Then tomorrow, we meet with the lawyer, and we begin the official process. What about the Lee family? You said we'd tell them too. That will come after the legal process starts. We want the authorities involved first. So when the Lees react, there is already official documentation. Dae-hyun's smile was thin. It will be more difficult for Samuel to talk his way out of it that way. That night, Nadine lay in bed, unable to sleep, her mind racing with possibilities. What would Samuel do when he found out? Would he be angry? Scared? Would he try to contact her? And what about Ji-yeon and her family? A soft knock on her door made her sit up. Yes. I saw your light was still on, Dae-hyun's voice came through. Are you all right? Nadine hesitated, then called. You can come in. He entered carefully, keeping the door open, respecting the boundary between them. He was in pajamas, dark silk that somehow made him look both more human and more intimidating. You are nervous about tomorrow. It wasn't a question. What if this all goes wrong? Nadine asked, voicing the fear that had been circling her brain. What if they don't believe me? What if Samuel convinces everyone I'm lying? Dae-hyun moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed, with careful distance between them. Then we try another way. And another. And another. Until someone listens. Until justice happens. He paused. But I don't think it will come to that. The evidence is clear. The money trail is clear. Samuel's lies will catch up with him. Why do you care so much? Nadine asked, the question that had been bothering her for weeks finally emerging. I keep trying to understand your motivation, but I can't. You've done so much already, more than anyone could expect, and you keep doing more. Why? Dae-hyun was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her face in the dim light from the bedside lamp. At first, it was about my sister. About paying forward the kindness shown to her. But now— He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Now, it is about you. About seeing you laugh at Dr. Lim's terrible jokes. About watching you learn to use chopsticks and get excited when you get it right. About knowing there is a good person in the world who was hurt and having the power to help make it right. Nadine's breath caught in her throat. There was something in the way he looked at her. Something she didn't quite know how to interpret. Dae-hyun, she started, but didn't know how to finish. You should sleep, he said, standing abruptly. Tomorrow is important. You need rest. He was gone before she could respond, the door clicking softly shut, behind him, leaving Nadine alone with her racing thoughts and the strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the baby. The lawyer's office was in a tall building in the business district, all glass and steel, like everything else in this city. Nadine wore her nicest dress, a navy blue one that accommodated her growing belly, and tried to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Dae-hyun's hand found the small of her back as they entered, a gentle pressure that grounded her. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Attorney Kim, greeted them warmly and led them to a conference room where everything Nadine had documented was spread across the table in organized folders. Your case is very strong, Attorney Kim said without preamble. International fraud, obtaining money under false pretenses, possibly breach of promise regarding marriage, depending on the communications. The evidence is clear and well documented. What happens now? Nadine asked, gripping her hands together in her lap. Now I file a formal complaint with the prosecutor's office. They will review the evidence and decide whether to open an investigation. Given the amount of money involved and the international nature of the fraud, I believe they will take it seriously. And Samuel, what happens to him? Attorney Kim's expression was neutral. That depends on many factors. If the prosecutor pursues charges, he could face fines, possibly jail time, and almost certainly deportation once any sentence is served. His visa status will be reviewed. The company that sponsored him will be notified. Deportation. Back to Cameroon. Back to face the community that knew he was supposed to be married to Nadine, starting a new life. The irony wasn't lost on her. I want to do it, Nadine said firmly. File the complaint. Start the investigation. All of it. Attorney Kim smiled. I will begin the paperwork today. In the meantime, she slid a folder across the table. These are some other documents you should consider. A petition for child support, for instance. Regardless of the criminal case, the baby has rights. Samuel is the father, which means he has financial obligations. The thought of being tied to Samuel through child support made Nadine's stomach turn. But Attorney Kim was right. The baby deserved support, even if she didn't want anything from Samuel herself. Okay, Nadine said. Whatever you think is best. They spent another hour going over details, signing documents, preparing for what would come next. By the time they left, Nadine felt wrung out, but also strangely lighter, as if setting this in motion had released some of the weight she'd been carrying. You did well, Dae-hyun said as they walked back to his car. I know that was difficult. It was necessary, Nadine replied, then stopped walking suddenly. Dae-hyun, when this is all over, when Samuel faces consequences, and I have some resolution, what happens to me? He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. What do you want to happen? Nadine stared at Dae-hyun, his question hanging in the air between them. What did she want? A month ago she would have said she wanted marriage, and a home, and a family with Samuel. Now those dreams felt like they belonged to a different person entirely. I don't know, she admitted. I can't go back to Cameroon. I quit my job, gave up my apartment. There's nothing there for me now except shame and questions I don't want to answer. But I can't stay in your guest room forever either. Why not? Dae-hyun asked, and he sounded genuinely curious. Because that's not... I can't be your charity project forever. I need to build something for myself and my baby. I need to be able to stand on my own. Then we help you build that. Dae-hyun started walking again, and Nadine followed. You speak English fluently. Many international companies here need English teachers or translators. We can work on your Korean so you can navigate daily life. We can find... You employment. Help you apply for your own visa. You make it sound so simple. It will not be simple. It will be work. But you are not alone in that work anymore. He glanced at her. Unless you want to be alone, if you want to do this without help, I will respect that. But the offer stands. They reached the car, and the driver opened the door for Nadine. She slid in, her mind spinning with possibilities. A job, her own place eventually. A life here in Korea that wasn't built on Samuel's lies, but on her own effort. I want the help, she said quietly once Daehyun was settled beside her. But I also want. I need to contribute somehow. I can't just keep taking from you. Daehyun was quiet for a moment. Can you cook? The question was so unexpected that Nadine laughed. I mean, yes, I can cook. Why? Because I cannot cook to save my life, Daehyun admitted with a slight smile. I eat takeout or meals prepared by my housekeeper who comes twice a week. But she is retiring next month, and I have been dreading figuring out what to do about food. You want me to cook for you? Nadine asked, not sure if she should be amused or offended. I want us to share the household responsibilities like roommates, Daehyun suggested carefully. You are staying in my home, yes, but that does not mean you are a guest forever. If you cook sometimes, and I handle other things, then we are both contributing. Partners in surviving, maybe. Partners. The word settled into Nadine's chest in a way that felt right. Okay, I can do that. Fair warning, though, I only know how to cook Cameroonian food. Then I will learn to eat Cameroonian food, Daehyun replied easily. It is only fair since you are learning to eat Korean food. They fell into a comfortable silence, and Nadine found herself studying Daehyun's profile as he looked out the window. He was handsome. She'd noticed that from the beginning, but it was more than that. He was kind and steady, and he made her feel safe in a way that had nothing to do with his money or his security team and everything to do with who he was as a person. The thought scared her. The next few weeks moved quickly. Attorney Kim filed the complaint, and the prosecutor's office opened an investigation. Samuel was contacted for questioning, which apparently did not go well for him. According to Attorney Kim's updates, he'd tried to claim the money was gifts freely given, but the evidence of his deception was too strong. Then the Lee family found out. Nadine was cooking dinner, ndolé and plantains, one of her comfort foods from home, when Daehyun came home looking grimmer than usual. What happened? She asked, wiping her hands on a towel. Jiyeon's father called Samuel into a meeting today, confronted him about the fraud case, about you, about the baby. Daehyun set his briefcase down. Samuel apparently tried to deny everything at first, but they had already done their own investigation. And they are furious, not just about the lies, but about the potential scandal. The Lee family has a reputation to protect, having their daughter's fiancé exposed as a fraudster who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend. Daehyun shook his head. They terminated his employment immediately. Without their sponsorship, his visa expires in 30 days. 30 days. Nadine stirred the ndolé, processing this. So he's being deported. Almost certainly. The prosecutor is also moving forward with charges. So even if somehow he found another sponsor, he would likely face trial first. Daehyun moved closer, leaning against the counter. How do you feel about that? Nadine thought about it, really examining her emotions. A month ago, the idea of Samuel being deported would have devastated her. Now, I feel like justice is happening, she said slowly. Not revenge, exactly, just consequences. He hurt me. He defrauded me. He abandoned his child. And now, he has to face that. Jiyeon ended the engagement, Daehyun added. According to my sources, she was extremely upset. Not just about the deception, but about the baby. She apparently did not sign up to be a stepmother to a child Samuel refused to acknowledge. Good, Nadine thought but didn't say. Instead, she asked, "Will she be okay?" Dae-hyun looked surprised by the question. "She has her family's support and wealth. She will recover, but it is kind of you to ask." "I don't hate her," Nadine realized aloud. She was lied to too, in a way. Samuel showed her whoever he thought she wanted to see, same as he did with me. We were both his victims. "That is a very mature perspective," Nadine shrugged. "Or maybe I'm just too tired to hate anyone except Samuel right now." They ate dinner together, Dae-hyun praising the underlay, even though Nadine could tell it was spicier than he was used to. He pushed through anyway, determined, and she found herself smiling at his dedication. "I have been thinking," Dae-hyun said as they cleaned up, together, him washing while she dried. "About what you said, about building something for yourself. Okay? My company. We need someone to handle English communications with our international clients. It is not teaching, exactly, but it would use your language skills. And it would come with a proper salary, benefits, visa, sponsorship." Nadine's hand stilled on the plate she was drying. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity to interview for a job," Dae-hyun corrected. "You would still need to meet with HR, prove your qualifications, do everything properly. But I think you would be good at it, and it would give you independence." Independence. The word tasted like hope. Yes, I want to interview. Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. My HR director is very strict. She might not hire you." But Dae-hyun was smiling as he said it, and Nadine knew he believed she'd get the position. The interview happened the following week, and despite Nadine's nerves, it went well. The HR director was indeed strict, but also fair, and seemed impressed with Nadine's language skills and her experience working with international students back in Cameroon. "We will let you know in a few days," the HR director said at the end, giving nothing away. Those few days felt endless. Nadine tried not to hope too much, tried to prepare for rejection, but when the call came offering her the position, she actually cried. "I got it," she told Dae-hyun that evening, her voice shaking with emotion. "I got the job." His smile was genuine and warm. "Of course you did. I told you. This means I can start saving again. I can eventually get my own place, support myself and the baby." The possibilities overwhelmed her. "I can actually have a future here." "You always could have," Dae-hyun said gently. "But now you have the means to build the specific future you want." That night, lying in bed with her hand on her growing belly, Nadine felt something she hadn't felt since, before the airport, peace. Not complete peace. There were still too many uncertainties for that, but enough that she could imagine tomorrow without fear. Months passed. Nadine's belly grew rounder. She started her job and discovered she was good at it, quickly becoming invaluable to the team. Her Korean improved enough that she could navigate the subway system and order food and have basic conversations. Dr. Lim monitored her pregnancy closely, assuring her everything was progressing perfectly. And through it all, Dae-hyun was there. Not hovering, not controlling, just present. He'd text during the day to check on her. He'd listen to her work frustrations over dinner. He'd accompany her to prenatal appointments when his schedule allowed, sitting quietly in the waiting room with actual excitement on his face when she'd emerge with new ultrasound pictures. It was domestic and comfortable and increasingly difficult for Nadine to remember that this was supposed to be temporary. "The baby kicked today," she announced one evening, about 6 months into her pregnancy. Like really kicked. Not just flutters, but full-on martial arts moves. Can I? Dae-hyun gestured toward her stomach, hesitant. Nadine nodded, and he placed his hand gently on her belly. They waited, and after a moment, the baby obliged with a strong kick against his palm. Dae-hyun's face transformed with wonder. That is amazing. That's my kid, practicing taekwondo before they're even born, Nadine joked, but her voice was thick with emotion because there was something about seeing Dae-hyun's awe that made everything feel more real. His hand was still on her stomach, warm and steady, and when he looked up at her, his expression was so open that Nadine's breath caught. Nadine, he started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with words. What? She whispered. I've come to care for you, very much. You and the baby both. The confession came out in a rush. I know the timing is terrible. I know you are still healing from Samuel's betrayal. I know this might be completely inappropriate given our situation, but I needed you to know. I care about you as more than just someone I am helping. Nadine's heart was racing, her mind spinning. She thought about the past months, about how Dae-hyun had become her anchor in this storm, about how her day felt incomplete if she didn't see him, about how safe she felt when he was near. I care about you too, she admitted quietly. And that scares me because the last time I cared about someone, he destroyed me. What if I'm making the same mistake? What if I'm just replacing one dependency with another? Then we go slowly, Dae-hyun said, his hand still on her belly where the baby was settling down. We take time to make sure this is real and not just trauma bonding or gratitude or circumstance. We build something true instead of rushing into something that might crumble. How do we do that? We keep living as we are, now. We keep being honest with each other. We see where our feelings lead without forcing them. He pulled his hand back, giving her space. And we remember that you are building your independence regardless. This job, this life, it is yours, whether or not I am part of it romantically. You are not dependent on me for your future. It was exactly what Nadine needed to hear. Okay, slowly, honestly. No rushing. No rushing, Dae-hyun agreed. But something had shifted between them, acknowledged now instead of hidden. When Nadine went to bed that night, she carried with her the memory of his hand on her belly, of the way he'd looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, she let herself imagine a future that included him not as a rescuer, but as a partner. The baby came on a rainy Tuesday in March, exactly 9 months after that terrible day at the airport. Nadine's water broke during a work meeting, and Dae-hyun was on a business trip to Busan, too far away to make it back in time. But he tried. Through the pain of contractions, Nadine could hear his voice on the phone through the nurse's speaker, frantic and worried. I'm coming. I'm on my way. Just, please, tell me she's okay. The baby is coming fast, the nurse reported. You should hurry if you want to be here. I am trying. Nadine, I am trying. I know, Nadine gasped between contractions. It's okay. It's okay. And then there was no more time for talking because the baby was coming now, and Dr. Lim was coaching her breathing, and everything narrowed down to push and breathe and push again. The baby's first cry filled the room like music. It's a girl, Dr. Lim announced, placing the tiny, wailing bundle on Nadine's chest. A beautiful, healthy girl. Nadine looked down at her daughter, and felt her heart crack open in the best possible way. She had her father's nose, Nadine realized distantly, but everything else was pure Nadine. Dark skin, thick hair, already trying to curl, and eyes that would probably end up brown like hers. Hello, little one, Nadine whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm your mama, and we're going to be just fine. Dae-hyun burst into the room 20 minutes later, still in his business suit, his hair a mess like he'd been running his hands through it. He stopped short when he saw Nadine cradling the baby, his expression going soft. "I missed it," he said, sounding devastated. "You're here now," Nadine replied. "Come meet her." He approached slowly, reverently, and when Nadine offered to let him hold the baby, his hands shook slightly as he took her. "She is perfect," he breathed, staring down at the infant with complete wonder. Absolutely perfect. And watching him hold her daughter with such care, Nadine felt the last pieces of her heart that Samuel had broken finally start to heal. 2 years later, Nadine stood in the living room of her own apartment. Small but hers, purchased with her own salary, watching Dae-hyun try to teach her daughter how to stack blocks. The toddler, named Grace after Nadine's mother, was more interested in knocking the blocks down than stacking them, and Dae-hyun's patient rebuilding attempts were absolutely futile. "She has your stubborn streak," Dae-hyun complained without heat. "She has your determination," Nadine countered. "Look how focused she is on destruction." Grace laughed, a sound like bells, and knocked down the towers again. Dae-hyun sighed dramatically, making Grace laugh harder, and Nadine's heart felt so full she thought it might burst. They'd taken it slowly, just like they promised. Dates that were clearly dates, not just shared dinners at home, conversations about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Therapy, because Nadine needed to work through Samuel's betrayal properly before she could fully trust again. And through it all, Dae-hyun was patient and present and real in ways Samuel had never been. A year after Grace was born, he'd asked Nadine to marry him, not with expensive rings or grand gestures, but quietly over breakfast, while Grace threw cereal on the floor. "I want to be your family officially," he'd said. "You and Grace both. Not because you need me, but because I want to build a life with you." "What do you think?" Nadine had said yes through happy tears, and they'd gotten married in a small ceremony with Dr. Lim and Dae-hyun's sister Minji and a few close friends. Grace had been the flower girl and had mostly eaten the petals, but it had been perfect. Samuel, meanwhile, had been deported and charged with fraud. The last Nadine heard, he was back in Cameroon, facing both legal consequences and social fallout from his community. He'd tried to contact her once to apologize and ask about the baby, but Attorney Kim had handled it. Child support came monthly now, garnished from whatever job he'd found, though Nadine didn't need it anymore. She put it in an account for Grace's future education. Ji-yeon had actually reached out too, surprisingly, about a year after everything happened. She'd apologized for her part in the hurt, even though Nadine had insisted she wasn't to blame. They weren't friends exactly, but there was understanding between them. Two women who'd both been fooled by the same man and had both survived. "You are thinking too much again," Dae-hyun said, pulling Nadine from her memories. He stood, leaving Grace to her block destruction, and wrapped his arms around Nadine's waist. "What is going on in that busy mind?" "I was just thinking about how different my life turned out from what I planned," Nadine admitted, leaning back into his warmth. "And how grateful I am that it did." Dae-hyun pressed a kiss to her temple. "Even the hard parts?" "Especially the hard parts. They brought me here. To you. To this life." She turned in his arms to face him. "I wouldn't change any of it." "Not even the rain at the airport?" Nadine smiled, remembering that terrible night, when her world ended and somehow began again. "Not even that. Because you found me in the rain, and everything after has been worth it." Grace toddled over then, demanding, "Up!" with her arms raised, and they both laughed as Dae-hyun scooped her up. She immediately grabbed his nose, making him wince, and Nadine felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. This was her family, her real family, built not on lies and broken promises, but on honesty and patience and love that grew slowly like a garden instead of burning fast like a flame. And it was more than enough. So yeah, Nadine's story didn't end at that airport in the rain. That's where it really began. Sometimes the worst moments break us open just enough to let better things in, and sometimes the person who helps us stand up becomes the person we choose to stand beside. Life's funny that way, right? If Nadine's journey hit you somewhere deep, maybe drop a comment about what got you most. And hey, there's more stories coming that'll make you feel all the things. Don't miss them.